Most trading mentors are leaving so much money on the table because their backend systems are broken. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact systems that we used to make $56,000 cash collected in 1 month and over $80,000 in revenue selling trading mentorships. I've broken these down into 4 simple steps that you can follow to, first of all, make the most amount of money, bring traffic to your offer, convert attention, and close deals. No time to waste. Let's get into the video. Now, the first part of making that 50K is actually selling something. And picking what you're going to sell is actually key, right? Because what you're going to pick is going to determine if scaling is going to be easy or maybe even impossible. So imagine you're trying to get, you're on a deserted island and you're trying to get to land, right? You have 2 scenarios. So in the first scenario, you're in this, old crappy boat or this dinghy, right? You're trying to get to land and you're paddling as hard as you can. You're conserving your energy. You're doing the best, all that you can to really get to that land. Well, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to reach it, man. It's a dinghy, right? And now in comparison, imagine if you're on this speedboat. All of a sudden, getting from that island to, finding some land is not only achievable, it becomes predictable, it becomes easy. So same way in business, the offer that you're going to pick, the offer type that you pick, will determine if scaling will be easy or almost impossible. So now in trading, there's only 2 options we can pick from. First one is going to be low ticket recurring, and the second one is going to be high ticket mentoring. Now let's compare these 2 options so that you can understand exactly which one of these will make you more money based on mathematical certainty. So the first option, low ticket recurring, this is going to be having some kind of Discord or Telegram group or something like that that you charge a monthly subscription for. So the funnel is going to look something like this. You're going to have YouTube, X, Instagram, whatever social platform that you might be using. And you're going to be using that to acquire leads. From there, you're going to send leads to either a free trial or just directly to a $99 per month or something similar monthly subscription. Now, I've tested both of these. The difference is really negligible. You'll make pretty much the same amount of money. And the KPIs here are around 10% for this step and 10% for this step. You might be somewhere a little bit lower, a little bit higher, doesn't really matter. On average, people will stay for around 4 months. Again, you might have 3, you might have 5. This is just the average. From there, you'll make $400 per person, so that's LTV, since you're charging a $99 subscription. Now, on the other side, you have high ticket mentoring. So this is going to be, either group coaching, one-on-one coaching. You can have a course with it as well. Same thing here, getting leads. The difference is going to be, instead of sending them to a free trial or directly to a subscription, you're going to be sending them to a VSSL funnel. On the VSSL funnel, they have the option to book a call. And in between these steps, there's a bunch of stuff that I could talk about, which isn't relevant. Essentially, you're sending them to a sales call, and on that sales call, they can get closed for around $4,000, right? So now here comes the fun part. Let's run the same 100 leads through both of these funnels and see what happens. So the first funnel, or offer type, low ticket, you're going to have 100 leads, and since you have a 10% conversion rate here, 10 trials and 10% conversion rate here, 1 customer. So in total, you'll make, this is optimistic, $500 per customer. So if we divide that $500 per customer divided by 100 leads, you get a $5 per lead average, right? Now, in comparison to high ticket, same 100 leads, because you have a lead to call ratio of 6 to 10%. Now, I purposefully took the low end of this just to make the point, just to see that I'm not, cherry picking here. You're going to get 6 calls, and from those 6 calls, 80% of them are going to show up and 30% are going to convert, which is going to be 1.5 customers on average. Again, we're going to average down because I want to make this point. You're going to make $4,000 from 100 leads, right? Now, 4,000 divided by 100, that's a $40 profit per lead. So hopefully you can see the difference here. For the same 100 leads, you're making $4,000 here and you're making $500 here. So the difference is literally 8 times more money with this offer type right here. So the numbers speak for themselves. Clearly, the path that gets you to $50,000 per month is the high ticket mentorship. Now that you know the offer type that's going to get you there, let's talk about how to actually bring eyeballs to that offer, because if no one knows that you exist, no one's going to buy your stuff. So I'm going to show you the exact philosophy that we use to get my clients from 0 to 400,000 views in just 70 days. Just like with your offer, there's a couple of platforms that you can pick from to actually get views, but based on my experience and data, there's only one that works the best for getting sales, and that's by far YouTube. Now, the reason for this is because if you compare watch times between, like average watch times between every single platform, YouTube, Instagram, X, TikTok, and so on, by far, YouTube has the longest average viewing durations. Now, the reason why that matters is simply because the longer that someone watches you for, the more value they can get from you and the more trust that they can build with you. Now, does that mean that Instagram and Twitter are just completely useless? No, of course not. They have their place. But for right now, I'm just gonna cover YouTube because that's the only thing, the bare essential thing that's gonna actually get you to that 50K per month. But for us to actually drive traffic from YouTube, we have to understand how it works. The way YouTube works, the way the algorithm works, is it's calculated based on something called a viewer satisfaction score. Now, the viewer satisfaction score is basically a composite of a bunch of smaller metrics such as CTR, so how many times people click on your videos when it pops up on their feed, watch times, shares, session time, so not only how long people watch your specific video for, but also after they click on your video, how long do they stay on the YouTube platform? Because you have to understand that YouTube has an incentive to keep you on the platform for advertisers. So it's also tracking that. It's tracking likes, returning viewers. So do people keep getting back to your videos, keep watching your videos? Comments, so how many times people comment and how many people subscribe to your YouTube channel after watching your videos. So it takes all of this stuff and it basically joins it together into one big score, which it calls the viewer satisfaction score. Now, the way this works in practice is you'll publish a video. YouTube will first test it with a very small audience to measure the metrics, get your first score. And if that score is good, YouTube will show that video to a broader audience. It then tests the score again, and as long as the score is good, YouTube will keep showing the video to a bigger and bigger and bigger audience until the score gets worse and YouTube will no longer show that to a fresh audience. And at that point, YouTube says, okay, so this is the view potential that this video has, the score has gotten worse, and we will no longer show this video to a broader audience. That's how it works, and that's step one. But then there's also a second, way less known part of the algorithm, which is actually way more important. And that second part is called watch history. See, what ends up happening is YouTube looks at the score of your video and it compares it to the score of a video that your audience is also watching. So it compares your score, maybe a 98, to their score, which is maybe a 10,000. Now, what YouTube does is it takes your impressions, because it sees, okay, this video has a 10,000 score. We're going to take all of his impressions and give it to this other person. Even if your score is relatively good for your channel, right? If a 98 is great for you, if the other person has a 10,000, YouTube will simply take your impressions and give it to them. And their video will keep growing on the back of your viewers, right? Because YouTube sees that people watching this video are just way more satisfied than your video. And this is exactly what happens when you go mass market. You're up against people like TJR, like Alex, people whose content is likely way better than yours because they have content teams, they have script writers, they have editors, they have better content creation skills, more credibility. So your chances of actually beating them is slim to none when it comes to viewer satisfaction scores. That's why YouTube is not a level playing field. So how do we actually beat these big guys, even if you're not TJR, for example? We need to figure out how to be the guy on top, which is actually stealing other people's impressions, and not be this guy at the bottom. And the way that we do that is we differentiate. We own our own space, right? Within the trading space, you own a smaller space, right? So for example, if you're talking about systematic ES trading, right? There's not many people talking about that. If you're talking about institutional scalping, like this guy here, you might know him. If we're talking about volume trading, right? Not many people are actually talking about that. So your chances of being this guy at the top, which is stealing someone else's impressions in that space, is way higher. And that's what we want to do. Okay, so now we understand why owning a space is important, but now you're probably gonna say, oh, but I probably need like 100,000 views to make $50,000 to $100,000 per month, right? No, of course not. All you really need to make $50,000 per month is anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 views on average per video. And the reason for this is because when you go, for example, mass market, when you're getting like hundreds of thousands of views, your dollar per view actually drops a ton. And now the reason for this is because this type of content, it's appealing to beginners. It's appealing to traders who haven't really been in the game for that long. And those kinds of traders, they don't yet have the amount of pain to solve their profitability problem as, for example, someone who's interested in this type of content because he's been in the game for 2 years, 3 years, and he's still not profitable. So therefore, he has more pain, and the more pain that people have, the more money they're willing to pay you to actually solve that pain. Does that make sense? Like, think about as a trader. Would you watch, for example, how to trade supply and demand, the only course you'll ever need, or, the best, okay, maybe this one is not so good, like the easiest way to start day trading from scratch guide? Probably not, right? And the same goes for people who have been trying to trade for around 2 to 3 years, right? They probably wouldn't watch this type of content because if you make this type of watered down mass market content, it's appealing to people who are just starting out, right? Cool. So now you understand that you need to own a space, but how do you actually do that in practice? Well, 3 questions for you, pretty simple. First of all, what is your unique backstory? What actually led you to the point where you are right now? What did you do wrong, and what was that thing that you kind of figured out that changed everything for you? Secondly, what do you believe is true that others don't? And thirdly, who or what is your enemy? In other words, what do people say that you believe is completely wrong? Now, all you really have to do is you make content around these 3 questions, right? You be contrarian, you go against the narrative, against the grain, and you point out why what most people are doing is wrong and what your way is and why it's better, and then you just back it up with proof. You back it up with as much proof as you can possibly back it up with. And if you can do that effectively, you'll do pretty well with YouTube. And at that point, you'll start generating leads. In other words, people who are interested in your stuff, right? But now, people don't really just wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm gonna spend $3,000 to $5,000 on a coaching program today, right? That just doesn't happen. In order for us to get them to that point, we have to, first of all, provide them with value and show them that we're actually credible enough to where it starts to make sense in their mind. So here's the actual lead nurturing system that we use to actually make that 50K per month, to warm up those leads and get them to that point where they actually want to buy stuff from us. If I had to strip away every single thing but one in this whole nurture system, I would keep YouTube as the main driver for nurturing. And what tends to happen when you make quality content is people watch one video, they love it, they on the first day binge 5, 10 of your videos, and from there they keep returning back to your videos, right? That's very important. They return back, and that's what grows the business. Now, you also have your Instagram and your X, right? Speaking of Instagram and X, if you guys aren't following me on there, I do post some valuable stuff sometimes, especially if you do have a trading offer. So you can follow me, you can find my links in the description or in the pinned comment below. And also on these platforms like X and Instagram, we're going to be using them in conjunction with automation software like ManyChat, like HypeFury, to pretty much get people in the DMs, right? Leveraging various lead magnets, getting them in the DMs, and from there, a setter can take over, which we'll talk about later. Back to this. So from here, you're going to have CTAs, right? Obviously coming from your videos, people watching your videos, you're going to have a CTA in every single one of them, right? You're going to have CTA, CTA. And the more CTAs that people are exposed to, the more likely it is to, convert down the line, right? Obviously, there's also like a point of diminishing returns. But that's not really important. All you have to know is that we're CTAing to the middle of funnel, right? So this is going to be the middle of funnel. And in the middle of funnel, we're pretty much exchanging value, right? So valuable assets like courses, discords, PDFs, case studies, stuff like that, in exchange for people's emails and phone numbers. We're gonna have an array of lead magnets, ranging from more so top of funnel lead magnets, which are things like free courses, so things that appeal to a more colder audience, right? To really get them to warm up in that initial stage, right? For all of these, you're gonna be running them through an opt-in page, a page like this, for example. And for this kind of page, the KPI is somewhere around 30 to 50% opt-in rates. And then also things like free discords, also going through an opt-in page. And this is done to collect lead information as well as filter by IP, because you don't want to let people from low GDP countries into your Discord to keep it high quality. And then all the way down at the bottom of the funnel is going to be things like case studies, right? So also putting these behind an opt-in. With the Discord, you're going to want to use the Discord kind of like a second email list, right? So you're going to be sending them recurring value, right? So things like setup reviews, things of that nature, along with social proof, right? So you're gonna wanna share all of your wins, all of your students' wins to the Discord, and then also using it as kind of a channel for CTAs. And then from here, once we have their email and their phone number, we're gonna be sending them into a couple things. All of these leads are gonna go into a 30-day value email sequence, which is gonna be structured in 3 steps. The first step is going to be value emails, second step proof emails, and third step pitch emails. The reason why it's structured this way is so that you, first of all, condition people to open the emails by sending them a bunch of valuable stuff, because then they see that, oh, these emails are actually valuable, they're not fluff, right? You then start sending them proof, right? So sending them down the funnel, right? Warming them up so that when you actually hit them with the pitch, they're already going to be at that stage where they've seen that you can provide value for them. They've seen proof that what you do actually works, and then they're ready to get pitched, right? And when you do it in this order, the chance of someone actually responding to your CTAs goes up by quite a large margin, right? So every single day, they're going to be getting emails. Those emails, some of those emails, especially the proof ones, are also going to send them to a results page. On this results page, they're going to have case studies. They're going to have all of the screenshots that you have of all of the funded accounts, all of the profits, all of the client results that you have, the testimonies, anything you can find. So when people want to verify the results, they can just go on the site and they just scroll through it and just never ends. And that builds insanely large amounts of credibility, right? So that's the email sequence. Those pitch emails are going to be sending people to the VSL page, right? So these are sending people to the results page, which, by the way, you also have a CTA here, which also goes to, again, the VSL page, right? So it all kind of connects in a way. The VSL page, this is a staple in this whole funnel, right? When they click on the CTA, they go to an application form and they fill out a form. On this form, they get qualified via type form, right? So we ask them questions like if they're actually financially qualified, if they want to put in the work, and so on, so that you don't end up wasting your time on calls with people who aren't actually serious about getting help. And with that, if you don't mess up, you can expect to see something like a 10% booking rate from people who see the VSL to people who actually book the call or want to book the call, right? So some people are going to fill out the form, but they're going to get disqualified. From there, people are sent to a confirmation page. And this page is actually way more important than people think, because most people make their decision whether this is something that they would even be interested in or not after they actually book the call, believe it or not. So on this page, you're going to have framing contents, getting them framed in a way that they understand, hey, this call is actually important. Also then, showing them case studies and proof, pretty much just taking this results page and putting it here so that before the call they can just binge through all of your results, see all of the proof, which makes them a lot more likely to buy on the call, as well as Q&A style mini videos on just common questions that are popping up on sales calls, right? So if people are asking you on the sales call, for example, like, hey, how long does this thing take? Well, you just make the video, like a mini Q&A video that they can watch before the call so that you save time on the actual call itself and the closer doesn't have to turn it into a whole education call where they explain every single little bit, right? They already come into the call understanding the important details that they want to know. And then it just comes to whether this is the right decision for them or not, right? Again, the point of this is to establish authority, pre-handle any possible objection that they may have before the call. And also, as soon as they hit the confirmation page, they're also already getting pre-call framing emails, right? So same purpose here, getting authority and pre-handling objections. Also sending them case studies, so just bombarding them with case studies. Sales assets, so these are videos that kind of explain your unique mechanism in a really good way so that they're correctly educated before the call. As well as that, they're going to start getting reminder emails and texts before the call, and this is going to increase show-up rates, as well as, you're going to have a triage call in the sales system, but we'll get to that. As well as all of this, right? So the emails, the results page, the VSL page confirmation, the pre-call emails, the reminders. You're also gonna have retargeting ads. And this is really important. Like if you're not running retargeting ads, you're pretty much throwing like money out of the window. It's pretty much as close to free money as you can get. So you're going to be running two types of retargeting ads here. The first one is going to be direct response ads. So this is going to be for people who haven't yet booked that sales call, right? And by the way, these ads are really cheap, like literally less than $50 a month, depending kind of on how many leads you have, but generally they're like less than $50. We like to run them on Meta. If your audience is mostly on Twitter, you're obviously going to run them mostly on Twitter. If your audience is mostly on YouTube, you're going to run them mostly on YouTube, right? But these retargeting ads, they're going to be all direct response. So having CTAs back to the VSL, getting them, wherever or whatever they might be doing, just getting them back to that VSL page so that they can book in a call with you. Also giving them free stuff, right? Giving them more value, just like these emails here. Also giving them proof, just like these emails here. So kind of the same thing like the emails, just the point of this, the reason why we have the emails and then also the ads and then also getting them into the Discord. So the reason why we do all of this stuff is so that they pretty much can't escape from your content. Like anywhere they look, they see your content. And what that does is it also influences something called familiarity bias, right? So if people see you literally everywhere, it starts to build up that authority in their head. And then the second type of ads that we're going to run is going to be hammer them ads. This is a strategy by Jeremy Haynes. So pretty much when people book a sales call, they're going to start getting a different type of ad. And the difference between just the usual retargeting ads and the hammer them ads is that with hammer them ads, there's no CTA. The only goal here is just to crank up the frequency of which they see the ads. That's the only goal, just bombarding them with as much of your content as you can possibly get across to them, right? That's the only point of this. So now, if you followed all of this here, what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna get people who are actively trying to buy your stuff, right? But the thing with people is they avoid action. So in order for us to get them over that line, just to bring them over their fear of actually committing to something, we're gonna need a solid sales system. So what I'm gonna show you next is the exact sales system that we use to close multiple six figures in deals in the trading niche. Cool, so what you need to understand first is that these two systems are not separate. These two systems in many ways are completely linked to each other. And this part here, especially the setting part of this, is also a form of nurturing, right? Now, the first thing you'll notice is that you have all of these people here, which we funneled into the sales system from this part of the funnel here, right? So leveraging free value. We got them into the sales system, we got their number, we got their emails, right? And from there, a couple things will happen. So for people who, for example, claim the lead magnets, applied to the form, right? So for the mentorship, low ticket customers, they're going to be sent into a CRM, and from there the setting process will begin. So what we're going to do from here is when people land in the CRM, the setter has their number, so they send them a text. And really the reason for this is just to increase the chance of them picking up. It's just a really simple text. And from there they dial them, so they call the number. And if they don't answer, they go to a follow-up sequence where we keep trying pretty much until they do pick up. And if the setter is successful, they set them on a sales call. The setter pretty much just tries to help them out. They go through a mini discovery process, seeing if they have pain points, if they actually need the service. Also then qualifying them if they qualify for a high ticket service, if they have the money. Same thing happens here with DMs, so people who, for example, engage on your social media, so people who engage with your stories, people who request lead magnets, for example, they get in your DMs via these automation platforms that we talked about, so platforms like ManyChat, HypeFury, and we're using those to funnel people into the DMs. From there, the setter is also in the DMs, so he can have the same conversation pretty much that he's having here in the DMs and set them on a sales call. Again, if they don't respond, they also go to a follow-up sequence until they do, right? So once we actually have them set on a sales call, once the sales call is booked, obviously we're booking this via Calendly. This is the closing part of the funnel, right? Now, one thing I forgot to add here is just that the KPI for the setting part is going to be the speed to leads. So the speed that you can contact these leads, or the setter can contact these leads, is going to be a big factor in how successful you are, because you have to take into account that most people don't remember what they ate for breakfast the day before, much less, which lead magnet they opted into. So as far as the closing side, a couple things are going to happen. So when the person actually books the call, someone needs to actually call them. This is called a triage call, to call them up and first of all verify that they're gonna actually show up, as well as send them pre-call resources, right, to get them primed to actually make a decision. This is really important, and the setter or the closer or whoever is doing the triage call is going to frame this as making sure that they're prepared, right? And really this is going to do two things. So first of all, it's going to give them more information, which makes them more likely to make a decision on the call. And then secondly, it's going to improve show-up rates, because people have actually committed and you reminded them that they have a call on XYZ day. And people are much more likely to show up. If you call them up and if you ask them like, hey, are you going to show up? People are more likely to show up, right? That's how we can have 80% show-up rates, for example, right? Now, when they hit the closing call, the KPI or the expected conversion rate is going to be 30%. From there, you have three options. People can either close, no show, or no close. So for the people who no show the call, we're just going to send them back into the setter's pipeline, and they're just going to follow up into oblivion pretty much until they reschedule the call. For people who didn't close, either we're going to at best try and collect a deposit from them, right? So some form of commitment to close them at a later date. Or what we'll do is we'll just re-offer them at mass later, either with a group closing call, or just send them to an email list or back into the setter's pipeline. And then the last option, if they did close, a lot of these people are going to be on payment plans, right? So you're not going to get like a 70% cash to revenue ratio immediately. So what you're going to want to do is take, the closers, and when they have too much time, essentially they're going to go through the clients and see what their situation is like, if their situation has improved, if they can get them to a paid in full via a financing plan or anything like that, so that we can pretty much bring up this cash to revenue ratio. Now, in order to run this whole system, you're going to need a couple of SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures, or in other words, just documents that detail how to actually do this, like every single process. Like, how do you actually triage someone, right? How do you actually dial someone? What is the text sequence? What does the DM setter, like how is the conversation supposed to look like, right? So that's SOPs. And what I'm going to do here is something that most people don't do, is I'm actually going to give you all of these SOPs for free. No strings attached. And the simple reason why I'm doing this is purely a mafia style lead magnet. I'm doing something that most people can't really afford to do because they sell some kind of course or they rely on coaching, which I don't. I make my money by partnering with trading offers one-on-one and actually scaling them to 50 to 100K per month on rev share, right? So actually getting a revenue share. I don't make money off courses. So I'm just able to give you all of this stuff for free. All you pretty much have to do is just contact me on either my Instagram, which you can find in the description. Just DM me the word SOP, or also Twitter if you prefer that. It's also in the description below. And yeah, if you guys want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to actually, remove yourself from the day-to-day operations so that you can focus on actually working with the clients, getting them results, while we take your business to $50 to $100 to $200,000 per month, you can also DM me here or just follow me on Instagram. We'll just have a conversation to see if it's a fit. If it's not a fit, I'll just give you some quick advice, send you on your way. And if you guys like this video, you can like it. If you don't want to like it, that's fine as well.